All right, today we're going to be doing a quick review on how to simplify radicals. So first of all, remembering a radical is just a square root here in this instance. So if we had something like the square root of 4, that one's an easy one to simplify. Most people know the square root of 4 is 2. But what if we have something else, like the square root of 28? Is that as simple as we can go? Well, it turns out it's not. We can break the square root of 28 down a little bit further. So if I break this down into, let's see, some things that multiply to get 28. One thing I can think of that multiplies to 28 is 4 and 7. So the square root of 28 is really like the square root of 4 times the square root of 7. And the square root of 4 is 2. So this is just 2 times the square root of 7. And this would be the simplified version of the square root of 28. Now let's say we thought of some different numbers, because there's a different way we can simplify this as well. Let's say we thought of, instead of 4 and 7, let's say we thought of, well, 28 divided by 2 is 14. So I could write this as the square root of 2 times the square root of 14, but actually 14 is a number that breaks down further. So what we're going to do here is a way that will work anytime you want to simplify a radical is to break it down into something called its prime factors. So remember, prime is what you call a number when only one and that number are its factors. So if I break this down a little bit further, 14 breaks down into 2 times 7. So really, if I go 2 times 2 times 7, that gives me 28 still. So this is the same thing as saying the square root of 2 times 2 times 7, right? Because 2 times 2 times 7 is 28. And then, since this is a square root, if I want to pull a number outside the square root, it takes 2 of that number to get it outside. So there's 2 2's here in a group. So this is like saying 2 root 7. So it's the same answer as we got the other way, just a different way of getting there. Okay, so that is simplifying radicals when we just have one thing we're working with here with no fractions or anything like that. Okay, so another kind of thing that you might see when you're simplifying radicals is something where you've got a square root and on the inside you've got a fraction. Okay, so just like when you have a fraction to a power, you distribute that power, or that radical in this case, to the top and the bottom of the fraction. So this is the same thing as saying the square root of 9 over the square root of 4. And the square root of 9 is 3, the square root of 4 is 2, so the square root of 9 over 4 is the same thing as saying 3 over 2. So that would be a simplified version of this radical with a fraction. Okay, so what if we have something like we had last time with this? So what if we have something like let's say the square root of well, let's use the same number as last time. 28 over, we'll go with 4. Actually, no, 4 is the divisor of 28. Never mind. Square root of 28 over 5. Okay. So, same thing happens here. We remember from the last time when we did the square root of 28. Well, first we got to give it to the top and the bottom. So square root of 28 over the square root of 5. Then we remember from last time the square root of 28 was 2 root 7. So another way that we can write that, or the way that we thought of that, remember, was we took 28 is 2 times 2 times 7. We broke it up all the way. And this was still root 5. And so then we could, since we have 2 2's in here, we brought the 2 out. So 2 root 7 over root 5. So we're almost done simplifying here. except there's one problem. We can't have a square root in the bottom of the fraction, or it's not proper to. So the way that we fix that is we multiply by the square root of whatever's on the bottom, on the top, and on the bottom. So what I'm multiplying by here is the square root of 5 over the square root of 5. And if you're thinking, whoa, wait a second, Miss Lindell, is that allowed? Is that against the math rules? It's allowed because root 5 over root 5, well, what's anything divided by itself? 1, right? And I can multiply things by 1 if I want to and not change their value. So we're all good to multiply by something over itself. So when I multiply fractions, you got to remember when you multiply across the top and then you multiply across the bottom. So, sorry, that's my dog whining outside. On the top, we have 2 root 7 root 5. On the bottom, we have the square root of 5 times the square root of 5. And the square root of 5 times the square root of 5 is just 5. Anytime you take the square root of something times the square root of that same thing, the square root comes off. Okay, so now we're almost done simplifying. We can combine this square root on the top, though, these two radicals, under one radical altogether. So what I could do here is go, okay, we have 2, and then 7 times 5 is 35. So I can go root 35 all over 5. This would be the simplified version of the square root of 28 over 5. Okay. I'm sorry, can't quite see that. There it is. Okay, so there's a crash course on simplifying radicals. Hopefully that was helpful and not too confusing. Have a great day.